Here's the modified Gaggia Evo Pro. Turn it on, you got your PID power control here. And then when you hit the brew switch, you have adjustable water flow with this knob right here. So see, this is wide open. And I can dial it back. Nothing. And then you can ramp it back up to full. And then this will heat up to 200 degrees for brew, and then 278 for steam. You have a lot more power with steam, and the brew is a lot more consistent. But this is what it looks like, and then this is stuck to the side of the machine. Here is the Sungaze Coffee Gaggia PID upgrade kit. First, we need to take the top lid off, which is these two Phillips screws. You're going to use the bigger end of your Phillips head screwdriver. So take these two screws off. Make sure your machine's unplugged. Make sure it's not hot. So go ahead, you can take those two screws off. Your screwdriver should have a smaller and a bigger end. The bigger end is a lot easier for this. Okay. So that should come off. This front edge has a lip. Pull that back. And then I like to put my hand over the screw holes in case they fall out. Sometimes they fall out. And then you're going to have two prongs right here for the ground connectors. There's a little tab on it. You can use your thumb to peel that connector back. And then they come right off. Looks like mine are on in two different directions. Okay, came off. I'm going to set this to the side for now. Okay, so I'm going to take these. I'm just going to set these outside the machine and out of the way. So the first thing that we're going to do is install the flow control upgrade. So here is the dimmer knob that you'll be using for your flow control upgrade. This is going to sit on your machine like this. So to do that, we need to disconnect the two wires that are going to your brew pump here. So to do that, we're going to take the thick Phillips head end. And here are the two connectors right here. These two connectors. Right there. So there's two connectors there. There's a thicker gray wire and a skinny, thin white wire. It may look different depending on your machine. This is the Gaggia Classic Evo Pro. So I'm going to take that out so I can get in there a little bit easier. Then I'm just going to try to push that connector off. See, that first one came right off, nice and smooth. Now we're going to try to get that second connector off. So if you're looking at it this way, the skinny connector's on the left side, the thick gray wire's on the right side. So I'm going to try to get that in there. You can push this pump forward a little bit, but you got to be careful. You don't want to break anything. And then I just got that second one off there. So now, gray wire is disconnected and that white wire is disconnected. So take both of these. Be careful not to pull on them too much. Could break them if you pull them too hard. So I've got these two wires. I'm going to try to get them out of the way. So we're going to be installing two new wires. Okay, so these two are out of the way for now. So now you're going to take your bag that says PWM wires, or dimmer wires. Okay, so you should have 4 wires here. You have 2 black wires, 2 blue wires. And then all 4 wires have a bare end. 2 of them are female, 2 of them are male. So we're going to take the 2 female wires right now, the black and blue. So the blue wire is going to connect where that thick gray wire was on the right-hand side if you're looking at it from head-on from the back. And then that black wire is going to go where that skinny white wire went. I'm going to start by putting on the thicker blue wire. It's kind of hard to see. This is one of the most awkward parts of the install. Better angle. If you are having trouble with this, there are 4 tabs on this power cable entrance. You can press these in and push this back, and this power cable entrance will come out, and it'll make it a little bit easier to do that. Come at it from the back side, it might be a little bit easier. I was trying to do it from a fancy angle for the video. Yeah, the back side's about 10 times easier. If that one pops on, that black female wire. I'm going to try to put that one on. Okay, so now you should see we have this blue wire connected where the thicker gray wire was, and the black wire connected where that skinnier white wire was. So now we're going to take this controller, and this blue wire is going to connect to this closest terminal to the PID controller, and the black wire is going to connect to that second terminal. So what we're going to do is we are going to push these wires through the back of the machine. I'm going to use, from the head on, the back right vent slot. I'm going to push these 2 wires through. Make sure they're not stuck in anything. Okay, and then we're going to add 2 grommets. A bigger grommet and a skinnier grommet. So for this, first we're going to put on the bigger grommet. It's right here. Okay, so put that over these wires. Okay, and then next, put the skinnier grommet over top of these wires. So now you should have 2 grommets, the thicker one closest to the vent, and the skinnier one will be going to the controller. So now we are going to start wiring up this controller. So we need to thread this blue wire through the enclosure hole right here. I'll take that through there. Okay. Tighten this wire up. And I'm going to loosen these terminals. I'm going to loosen all 4 so I can get my wires in there easily. So remember, closest to the PID controller, that first terminal is going to be that blue wire, that blue female wire. And I'm going to tighten that. Okay, I'm going to give that a tug, nice and snug, so that blue wire is good to go. Okay, so now I'm going to do that exact same thing with that black wire. Okay, so now do the same thing, make this cable in nice. I'm going to pull this back and get that under that second terminal now. Yeah, now I'm going to tighten that down. A little bit easier if you use the Phillips head side. Cool. Okay, so you should have 2 of those wires wired. I'm going to set them down to the side for now. Now the next thing that we are going to do is plug in these male connectors. So what we're going to do is we're going to take both of the bare ends of these. We're going to push them through that vent grommet just like the other ones. Okay. And now we need to thread these through both of those grommets just like the other one too. Okay. Pull that through. There we go. All right, now we're going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to start with the black wire. I should thread that in here. Get back. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with that black wire. Tidy it up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to give that one a tug, make sure it's good. Okay. Now we're going to do the blue wire. And I'm going to tidy up that cable line just like before. And then I'm going to wire this to that last free terminal. So it should go blue male, or blue female, black male, blue male. Trying to get in there, get it sitting there. You want to make sure the wire isn't loose when you put it in here. I'm going to give that wire a tug. All good. Okay. Set that down here for now. So now I am going to take this blue wire and I'm going to connect it to this thicker gray wire. The stock connector from Gaggia, the disconnector from the brew pump. I'll plug that into the blue male. And then I'm going to find that black male connector. I'm going to connect this to that skinny white cable. Okay, and both of them click. They're both in there for now. Okay, so going to take my lid, I'm going to put it back on the machine. I'm not pushing it down or anything. We're just going to test to make sure our brew pump works. So now I'm going to take my machine, I'm going to plug it in. Now there shouldn't be any exposed wires. Just want to make sure you don't touch anything inside here. So now I'm going to turn the machine on. It doesn't need much. We just need to press the brew button to make sure this works. So nothing. Ramps up, off. Okay. We'll turn that off and the flow control upgrade is done. Okay, so now we are going to start the PID install. So we need to remove the boiler. So I have part of your screwdriver here and then the hex key that comes with your kit. You're going to put that over the screwdriver to use your leverage. And then you're going to take these 4 boiler bolts out. There's one here, second one here, third one on this side, and fourth one on this side. So you need to push towards the machine to loosen these. So pushing and pushing this way. And it loosens. So then do the same thing for the 2 on the other side. push until it loosens. And for that fourth one, should do the same. As soon as it cracks, it should come right out. Okay, so there's our first bolt. Here's our second bolt. Here's our third bolt. And then here's that fourth bolt. So now that boiler's gonna come out. We should have the 4 bolts here. All right, so you can take those and just set those off to the side. Make sure you don't lose those. Then we're gonna go back inside of the machine. Okay, so now take your uniball pen. And for all these connectors, you're going to label them so that you can put them on in case they get disconnected somehow. So let's see. You can label them however you want. Just take a picture. So I'm going to start with, this is 1. This is 2. This is 3. That's 4. 5. That's 6. If you ever do have to replace your boiler, you'll appreciate that you have these labeled. So now we can take this steam knob off. This is just going to pop straight off. Okay, you can set that to the side, loose up. And the next thing we're going to want to do is grab our 17mm wrench. And then we're going to put it on this steam knob right here, 17mm bolt. So it might be easiest to disconnect this guy right here. And try to get this on here. You're not going to have a lot of room to move it, but you barely need to move it. You just need to get it started for it to come off. So that's going to come off. Pull this back. And then you can pull this straight through. As far as the steam nozzle goes, that is how you should disassemble this. Do not take this pin out. Do not disassemble it another way if you don't have to. Take that, you can put that to the side. So now the boiler should be free. I've got my hand on the underside. I can push up on it. So now the last thing I need to do is, there is a little cap right here on this side that holds that steam knob in place right here. So we're going to disconnect that. Okay, so now that boiler should be able to come free. Okay, so now we have our bag of wires. Now we can start putting some of these in. So we can start with the temperature wired. I grab that. Okay, here is our temperature sensor wire. Okay, so we need to grab the thermal paste from the kit. And I like to grab a heat shrink with it too. You're going to open that thermal paste. Okay, and then you have to score it with your thumb to get in there. Take the lid off. And then take that temperature sensor. You'll have these threads here. You just barely want to put any of that thermal paste on. I'm just trying to get a coat on all the sides of it. Okay. So you don't want a lot on here. If you put a lot on, it could screw things up. Okay, so now I've barely got any on there, and I'm going to take this heat shrink, and I'm going to put it over top of it and roll over it to push it in those threads. Okay, so now there's barely any on there. It's just all inside those threads. So I'm going to take this, put it off to the side for now. And then the next thing that we're going to do is pull this boiler out. So to do this, you want to use your hand underneath on the group head. Push on that shower screen. Push on that. You can pull it up and out. Just pay attention to these tubes right here. You want to make sure these don't get caught on anything. You have to be really careful with this part. But if you do it right, you can pull this all the way up and out like this. You want to make sure you're not bending any of these wires or any of these tubes. But then if you come over to this side, you can see that I have these brew wires right here. You get over that. Okay, we've got the two brew wires right here. So what you can do now is disconnect those. They're kind of bubbling to get out. Yeah, there's one. And there's the second one. Okay. So now here's our brew thermostat. So now we can take that 17mm wrench, can turn it on there, and pull backwards. I'm going to pull this way. Then you should be able to unscrew it. You can hold on to this, but you won't need it. Okay, so there's your stock thermostat. Okay, now we're going to put in the new temperature sensor. So this part is not the easiest to do. You can have a free hand, it helps. I'm going to take this, I'm going to push it in there, and you want to be really careful with this part. This is the most likely to fail part in the entire kit, is this temperature sensor. So just be careful when you insert this. And you want to just barely get it started. Okay, so it just started threading. So now I'm going to take this wire, and I'm basically just spinning the wire in my hand in a circular motion. It kind of threads it in for you. Okay, so now I'm at the point where it's pretty much hand tight. So I'm going to take my hands, just try to tighten it a little bit more. I'm not trying to break anything. I'm just trying to get it nice and snug. Okay, so now we can take this temperature sensor wire, and now I'm going to put the boiler back into its place. So first I want to get these two wires, and I want to put them back and out of the way. So they're going to be in the way right now. So I'm just pulling those through, and I'm pulling them up and over here where I put those ground wires from earlier. But I'm actually going to do the same thing with that temperature wire now too. Pull this up and out of the way. Okay. I'm going to take this. There. So it should sit back in place. Okay. Your boiler is good. Your new temperature sensor is connected. Your brew wires are right here. So what we can do with this is we can take this wire. I'm going to run it through the back and push some of the excess down here. And I'm going to run this through that vent slot, just like those flow control wires from earlier. And then once that sits outside the machine, I'm just going to leave it there for now. Okay. So now the next thing that we can do is we can do the ground wire tap. So here is ground wire. It's a female connector on one end, a bare end on the other. So there is a terminal on top of this Gaggia boiler right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to thread this on. Should go on. And then I'm going to run this off that back vent slot just like all those other wires. Should go through. Okay, and I'm just going to leave that there for now. All right, so now here is one of the more annoying parts for the Gaggia Classic Pro. We're going to add this black wire to this switch right here. So to do that, I'm going to move this boiler a little bit out of the way for now. And then we've got this power switch right here. So we're going to pull this back, disconnect this. So then we've got our power switch monoblock connector here. So if you look here, you've got two white wires on this side and a black and brown wire on this side. So what we're going to do for the Evo Pro is we are going to swap the top and bottom on this side and then on the other side. So you're going to put this bottom white wire to the top and this top white wire to the bottom. And then same for here, you're going to move the brown to where the black is and the black to where the brown is. So to do that, we're going to take that screwdriver, comes with your kit. You're going to want the bigger flathead side. And then you're going to take it inside of this connector in here. You're going to want to keep your screwdriver flat. And then you're going to push the flathead on those pins right there in the middle. And then if you do it right and angle it upwards, that came out. And then this next one, I'm going to do the same thing. Well, actually, before I do that, I'm going to fix this wire here, because after you push these out, these tabs get pressed in. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to get my flathead under this, and I'm going to push it back a little bit. So now that connector's back up. It'll thread in next time. Or stick in place, I should say. Okay, so now we're going to do that same thing for that bottom connector. I'm going to go in here, shove that in. Hopefully that's enough to get this black wire to come out. Looks like it was. So now where I just took that brown wire out of, I'm going to put this black wire in. So I switched their spots. Okay, and then it clicked in place. I'm going to do the same thing for this brown wire. I'm going to pull that connector in back. Then I'm going to put this in. Wait for that to click. It should be in there. Okay, so now we need to do that same thing for the other side. So I'm going to take the bottom white wire, do the same thing, shove my screwdriver in. There we go. Same thing. I'll pull that tab back towards me. You want to make sure you don't go too far. Could break it. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to depen the top. So this top wire needs to go to the bottom. So this one in my hand right now is the top wire, and it needs to move to the bottom. We're going to leave the top wire for last. Okay, so now you move that top wire to the bottom. Now here's that wire that used to be the bottom white wire. This is the wire that we're going to do. Okay, so I'm just going to get this through here so it's not so awkward where it's at. Now I'm going to put this back in place, just like before. Okay, so now all of these are depinned. That's all we have to do with this part. You just want to make sure that they click in, and then you want to make sure that what we're going to do is we're going to add this wire, and when we add this wire, you just want to make sure that this top white wire doesn't get pushed out when we do that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move this boiler so it's kind of a little bit out of the way so we got some room to work. Okay, moving all these wires out of the way. So I got a good amount of space here under my power switch. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put this connector back on. I'm just going to get it started. Okay, it's just started. Okay, so now I'm going to take the black piggyback wire. And I'm going to tap that top white wire. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take the piggyback. I'm going to shove the male end underneath on the male end on the switch. So I'm basically putting two male ends together into one female end. Okay, so I'm trying to get in there. I'm trying to put some pressure on this so I can get underneath of this. And I'm just trying to get that so it starts. Okay. You'll know once you get it. Felt like I got it there. So I'm going to try to push this cable end on. I'm keeping my finger on the back of this cable and I push it in just to make sure that new wire doesn't get pushed out. And it looks like my wire did actually get pushed out. So I'll show you what happens when that happens. I guess that was a good thing. Okay, so my wire got pushed out a little bit there. It probably would have been fine, but we'll do it just to be safe. Better safe than sorry. Okay, so we'll try that again. Okay, heard that click. Okay, got it that time. Awesome. All right, so now that wire is on there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this black wire and I'm going to grab one of the heat shrinks from the kit. I'm going to put it over top of that bare end. So then I'm going to cover that terminal right inside this case. I'm just going to cover that. Okay, so now that should be good. So I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to take this wire and I'm going to push it through that vent hole. Okay. So one thing I do want to say is on the newer Gaggias, the switches are a little bit cheaper. And if the boiler is pushing up on any of the wires in the switch, it'll make those switches push outwards and they might sit kind of awkward. So to make sure that doesn't happen, take all of the wires for your switches and try to push them down and out of the way so that your boiler doesn't push. So I've kind of moved all of my wires here. You'll see none of these wires are getting pushed in by this boiler, so all of my switches are going to sit flat. So if your switches aren't sitting flat, that's why it's these wires. Okay, so the next part that we're going to do is the power wire tap. So to do the power wire tap, we're going to disconnect this black wire right here, the Gaggia Evo Pro. Then get in there, have that disconnected. I'm actually going to do the same thing to this wire that I just did, that black wire. I'm going to take that heat shrink. I'll put it over that cable end, just so that this female end is insulated. Okay. So I'm going to take that black wire. I'm going to take the male end of that yellow wire that we have in our hands right now, push it into the Gaggia female. Missed. Okay. So now that's together. So now we're going to put the female end of the yellow wire where that black wire used to be. And then it's going to slide right on. Okay. So that is the hot tap. Okay, so now we are going to take this wire, push it through. One thing you want to pay attention to is there's 2 yellow wires, a ground, and a hot wire. What we can do is we'll take this yellow ground wire and we'll actually just leave this to the side. We'll worry about that later. So I'm going to take that hot wire. I'm going to push it through that vent like all the other wires. So now that is pretty much all of the extra wires that we're going to add. Now the next part of the install is to add the relays with the vent grommet, or with the vent clip, which is this. So to prepare this, what we're going to do is we're going to take the adhesive strips that we have and we're going to apply them to the sides of these relays. This isn't necessary, but on any of the modified machines that I do sell, I like to do this just so these don't get messed up during shipment. So I'll take a little bit of adhesive, put it on the sides here. Okay, then I'm going to take some of that thermal paste from earlier. I'm just going to apply it to the back of these relays. Okay, I'll go a little bit through here. Okay, so now I take the adhesive off of the. I want to take the adhesive off of these 2 3M pads here. And then I'm going to pull the relay wires, the top and bottom wires, in my hand so they're out of the way. And then all of the wires that we've added to the machine up until this point, I'm trying to keep those out of the way too. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this relay down inside the machine. You want to make sure you don't accidentally touch your adhesive to anything. So I'm keeping these out of the way. And then these wires right here, I'm trying to pull these out of the way. What I'm trying to do is get these relays to sit in there. And then once you get them to sit, they're pretty much all the way right now. We're going to get these. There we go. So now that I've got these kind of flat, you'll see they line up with the vent hole up here. So the relays go right through there, and then the clip holds it in place. I'm going to press that adhesive. The adhesive will stay in place now. So now we have a whole mess of wires in here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull these relay wires so they're out of the way for now. Over here. And then here are the 4 new wires that we just added. Clean it up a little bit in here. We can send these through that vent hole like all the others. So the way your vent clip here should be is your brew relay, which is SSR 40DA, should be on the left, and your steam relay, which is SSR 40AA, should be on the right. So the brew relay has a red and white wire on the bottom. The steam relay has a white and blue wire on the bottom. So I'm going to take this white and red wire from the brew relay like this. I'm going to tie these cable ends together, and I'm going to send them through that vent hole. Forgot how to speak English. Okay, so I'm going to pull that through that vent hole. Same for these white and blue wires now. I'm going to twist these together so they're together. And I'm going to send them through that vent hole. Okay, so now we have a lot of wires through the vent hole. And then here are wires from earlier. So I'm going to start with the brew relay, which are these 2 thick red wires on the SSR 40DA on the left-hand side. So I'm going to pull these 2 wires. I have 2 wires here right now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this wire that is 1 here, and I'm going to connect it to this red. So the way that I do these is I take these connector, I wrap it around, and lets me kind of tie them. So when we turn this on later, these wires, the polarity matters. So if you don't have heat later, it could be that you have these two reversed. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to take these 2 wires. I'm going to kind of just push them out of the way for now, so they're not in our face. And then the last thing we have to deal with are these 2 steam wire, the SSR40AA. So these are actually going to connect to these 1 and 2 connectors right here on the steam thermostat. So the way we do that, so we disconnect these. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do that same thing that I did earlier. I'm going to send the wires the same way over here. I'm going to tie these together. These ones don't really matter which one is which. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing over here, tying these together. All right, so now I've got all 4 of those relay wires over here. I'm going to tuck them down here, out of the way. So the only wire that's separate right now is our ground wire, which is yellow. Okay, so that is all of the wiring that we have to do for right now. Now we're going to finish wiring up the PID controller. So we should have these wires sticking out of the back of our machine right now. Every wire that we've pulled, except for the PWM wires, and except for that ground wire that's off to the side over here. We're going to deal with that ground wire last. Okay, so the next thing that I can do is we need to get all of these wires right here inside of this enclosure in front of us. So I'm going to start by getting a little bit of extra slack on that temperature sensor wire. Okay, you'll be able to get more now. Go. Okay, so now the first thing I'm going to do is, it'd be cool if I could do these all at once, but I'm just going to try it one at a time. I normally will twist these together a little bit so they fit through. And I'm going to get these through both of those grommets. And I'm going to do the same for the rest of the wires too. One thing I'm trying to pay attention to here too is making sure that blue and white and red and white wire stay together on the brew and steam relay. So I'm going to send the red and white through. Then as you add more wires, this grommet will be harder and harder to slide the wires through. So what you can do when it gets tough is you can get the wires started and then just push the grommet up. Usually works pretty decent. Okay, now next I'm going to do the yellow and black wire. I'm going to do that smaller grommet last. Just realized camera couldn't see that. I'm basically sending all of these wires through the grommets. Okay, now I just have this little grommet here. I'm going to try to sneak this under. Then I'm going to push the grommet up over this wire, and then that's much easier to come through. Same with this. For this yellow wire, I'm just going to try to get it inside the grommet a little bit. Okay, and I should be able to push it through. Neat. Okay, so there is all of our wires. I will grab that ground wire now. I'll send it through the back of that vent grommet and bring it down here. I'm not going to send it through the second grommet yet because I don't want to get it confused. Eventually, I'd like to change this wire to green, but for now it's yellow. So I'm going to set that off to the side, and then I haven't put it through that second grommet. Okay, so now all of your wires should be over here. Of course, I've got this ground wire on the side, but here's the big bundle of wires. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to send them through this hole here. And then there is another hole right here where my finger is pointing. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a hole right here that'll let you thread wires through this grommet, through this side, into the back of this controller. So to get started, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my finger right here at the back, and I'm going to pop the PID controller out. Comes out pretty easily. Just pop that out. You have a little bit more space to work with. So I'm going to set this to the side for now. Okay, so now I'm going to work on threading all those wires through. I might start with the temperature wire just because it's bigger. But then what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to send them straight through this side with them sticking out where the PWM is. Okay. Yellow line. Get that black wire. And we'll have a little bit of trouble with this black one. Try to send it to the top. There it is. Awesome. Okay, so last we have this red and white wire right here. Now coming. Okay, so now we have all wires through, except for that ground. So next, I'm going to do that same exact thing, but I'm going to push them through to the controller side. So now I'm going to try to push these through the hole that is right here inside of the enclosure. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. I'm going to take these. I don't know if you can see that, but I can stick my finger through this hole right here. You can see where it is. Basically, you just push your wires through. Trying to make sure you have a view of this. You stick your wires through. And you'll see eventually they'll come through on this side. And then you can pull it through. See, now I have the wires through here, and then I'm just going to pull a little bit of slack on that, so I have a little bit to work with. Okay, now I'm going to do the next. I'm going to do that for the rest of these wires next. Not really sure what the camera can and can't see right now. Okay, there's that black wire through. Now I'm going to do blue and white wire. Okay, there's blue and white wire through the box. I'm going to do the yellow wire. Okay, that one was a little bit harder to get through. Just shove that there. Okay, and then last we have this red and white wire. I'm going to thread that through with the rest of them. So what you can do with these wires is they get kind of bundled up in here. You can take your thumb and I'll just push them all the way back. So now there's a bunch of room in the slot, thread through the rest of those wires. So there's that. So there's all of the wires except for that ground wire that's sticking off to the side. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to get that one pretty much ready to go, but still keep it separate from everything else. So I'm going to send it through this second grommet, and then I'm going to send it through here, and then I'm going to leave it on the side with the dimmer controller. Okay, I got it through that grommet. Now I'm going to send it through that dimmer enclosure hole. Perfect. All right. So that's good for now. I'm going to leave that to the side for now. Okay. So that's all of the wires pulled through here. So now the next thing that we're going to do is get ready to wire up the PID and the PID controller. Okay, so one thing that would be nice to do would be to get a little bit of slack to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull a little bit here. I want myself a little bit of slack. Okay, that should be enough. Start wiring up. I'm going to send these through the middle of the controller box now. Okay. So I'm just going to push all these wires through here. Try grabbing free. Okay, now all of the wires are sticking out of that box. Okay, so now I've got our PID controller here. So when you look at it, keep in mind it's terminals 1 through 5 on this side, and terminal 6 through 10 on this side. Okay, so I've got these wires right here behind me. The ground wires obviously still kept to the side. So first things first, what we can do is we can start with this yellow wire right here. So you need to go grab your blue jumper wire. Okay, I have my blue jumper wire right here in front of me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to twist the ends on the jumper wire. And then I am going to go to terminal number 1, which is right here. And then I'm going to disconnect, or I'm going to connect this blue jumper wire and that yellow ground tap, or power tap, sorry. Okay, so your yellow wire and your blue jumper wire are going to connect to terminal 1 on your PID controller. I have not yet loosened the terminal, so I can't do this yet. Wait a second. Okay, so now we're going to wire up our PID controller. It has terminals 6 through 10 on this side, terminals 1 through 5 on this side. So I'm going to take our blue jumper wire from your wires bag and that yellow wire tap. Remember, this is not that ground wire. It's still off to the side. This is your yellow wire and your blue jumper wire. So I'm going to go ahead and twist those together. And then I'm going to attach them to terminal 1. Terminal 1 right here. Try to get both of them sitting in there nicely. Don't want any of your wires exposed here, any of the little ends exposed. So once I get them in place, I'll usually place my thumb on it so they can't move. And then you can go ahead and tighten down on that. Okay, so now that should be good. Gonna give it a nice little tug. I'll still tighten them down before I'm done. But that should be good there. Now the next thing that we can do is we can take the other end of this jumper wire and connect it to terminal number 4. If you're trying to connect this up and these cable ends are too long, what you can do is you can take it and just bend it over a little bit on itself so that it sits inside of that terminal better. But I'm going to connect this to terminal 4 right here. Okay. So I've got that on terminal 4 now. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that. Okay. Now the next thing I am going to grab is let's do the red and white wire. Okay, so red will connect to terminal 10 and white will connect to terminal 9. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect these guys. Okay, now I'm going to take that white wire and I'm going to put that on PID terminal number 9. Okay. All right, there we go. It's on PID terminal number 9. I'm going to try tightening that up. Okay, there's PID terminal 9. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that red wire, connect that to PID terminal number 10. Okay. All right, next thing we can do is we can connect the blue and white wires from the steam relay. So the blue wire is going to connect to terminal number 5. So we can go over here, find terminal number 5, which is the J1. Okay, so now I'm going to try and wire this up to terminal number 5, get a good connection. That seems pretty good. Okay, so that blue wire from the steam relay is being connected to terminal 5. So now that white wire from the steam relay, we're going to connect that to terminal 2, but we're going to do it with that black wire that we tapped from the rocker switch. Okay, so I'm trying to make sure I have enough room here. Trying not to do too much off screen. Okay, so I've got the black and white wires right here. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to connect these to terminal number 2, which is right here. Okay, I pretty much got those in place. Screw that down. Okay, so now the black and white wires are there. So far the only thing that we have left is that ground wire that's sitting off to the side there, and then these 3 temperature sensor wires. So depending on what temperature sensor you have, the way that you do this is going to be a little different. But to explain it, your temperature sensor has 3 wires. It'll have 2 wires of one color and 1 wire of another color. So on mine, I have 2 red wires and 1 white wire. On yours, you may have 2 white wires and 1 red wire. The only thing you need to pay attention to is which one you have 2 colors of and which one you have 1 color of. So whichever one you have the single color of, so for mine, that's white, I'm going to take that one and I'm going to connect it to thermocoupler R. Let's see if I can get that in focus. So thermocoupler R, which is going to be terminal number 8. So I'm going to go ahead and try to connect this to terminal number 8. For these wires, they are pretty long by default. So you'll probably need to fold them over on themselves. But now you want to go ahead, connect that to terminal number 8, your single wire to terminal number 8. I wasn't super confident in my connection on that one, so I'm going to redo it. Okay, pretty much got that in place. Okay, now the next thing is we're going to take the 2 double color wires. For mine it's red. I'm going to connect those to terminals 6 and 7. It does not matter which one goes on 6, and it does not matter which one goes on 7. Okay, so I'm just getting these cables ready to go on. All right, I'm connecting the first red one to terminal number 6, which is thermocoupler negative. I didn't mention this until now, but if you're using your screwdriver, the bigger Phillips head works much better for this. Okay, last but not least, I've got my thermocoupler positive. All right, so now that should be all of the wires except for that ground wire. So now I'm going to feed that ground wire through, and I'm going to wire this up. This ground wire is going to go to terminal number 3 on the PID controller. So I'm going to go ahead and get that ready for now. Okay, so that is almost through, so I'm going to send this through just like the rest of the wires. Here is that yellow wire. So now, like I said, that ground is going to attach to terminal number 3. Cool. Just trying to get it in there without tangling everything up too bad. Okay. I'm taking the ground, putting it on terminal number 3. Okay, so now that should be your PID controller fully wired. So if we look back at it, we have that power cable entrance tap right here, so that should be your hot tap. And then that is also the blue jumper wire, and that blue jumper wire moves over to terminal number 4. So now I've got 1 and 4 covered. Next is terminal number 2, and that is the white wire from your steam relay and the black wire from that power rocker tap that we did. 3 is the ground that is on your boiler. 5 is the blue wire from the steam relay. Flipping to the other side, 9 and 10 are your brew wires. And then terminals 8, 7, and 6 are your temperature sensor wires. So now the next part of this is going to be some cable management, just pushing these cables back in, and then we'll test the machine, make sure it works. So first things first, we want to put this controller back into the enclosure in a way that makes sense. So what you want to do is you want to take your enclosure and stick it on the side of your machine. So for now, I'm just setting it on my machine so that I know which way is right. And then based on that, you want to put your screen in. So for mine, obviously, let's see if I can get it more. There's one side that is meant to stick to the machine, which is this side, and then here's the other side. This button is facing down, so I want my screen to read like this. So I'm going to push this screen into my controller. So give me 1 second, and I'll fix the camera. Okay. Okay, so now if we're looking at this, you'll see I pushed all of these wires. I pulled them through here so that I could get this controller to sit in. And now it'll sit on the machine like this. So it sits like that. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to pull this big braid of cables through here, and then I need to pull it up this way so that I get rid of all this slack. So I will do that in a second. And then I'll have to do that exact same thing with, you'll see there's a big bundle of wires right here from the dimmer. So we'll also have to feed those back to the machine. We'll worry about that cable management in a minute. For now, we can just push that all the way in and we can test to see if this actually works or not. Okay, so I have my machine plugged in and then I put the lid back on the top of the machine just so there weren't any exposed wires or anything. So if you followed along with me up until now, you should be able to plug your controller in just to test to see if it works. We're not going to keep it on for an extended period of time. So what you can do is with your machine plugged in, you can then flip your power switch. And you should see that screen start to illuminate. And then you'll see the temperature will slowly start to rise. Okay, so we've now verified that the PID controller is working. The last thing to do would be to flip that steam switch. As long as the temperature keeps rising, means you should be good to go. So now we can turn that off, and then the next thing is unplug it, and now we can work on cable management. You can take these wires. I make sure they're all kind of up and out of the way. And then what I'll do is I'll just push that PID controller in so those wires don't get stuck there. And then these wires right here, you need to pull through this hole. And try to get some of those through. Won't be able to get them all right now, but I'll eventually get them all. Okay. See, that's okay for now. All right. So now our wires right here. So we kind of want to tidy this up now and get it to where we can stick it onto the machine. So first things first, I'm going to pull all these wires back into the machine. You'll have to pull some individual wires to get them all to pull with each other. Okay, there we go. I should be able to pull all these back. Kind of pulling them together, making sure I'm not pulling one too hard. Okay, so for this last little bit, I try to pull some of these wires out now. See, there's a yellow. You're going to be kind of tangled up in there. It's not the end of the world. Tug on the individual wires, you can usually free up a lot of that. Looks like both of the white cables need to be pulled here. Yeah, that feels a lot better. Okay. So now I need to pull on these yellow cables. Try to get rid of that slack. Just basically pulling every wire, trying to get the slack out of it. Okay. Might have to pull them a couple times. It's alright. This part just takes time. Started black wire. There it is. There we go. I got another white wire. Almost done with this part. Okay, so I think that's good enough. So I'm going to take my grommet. Going to put it right next to where it needs to go. So that part is done. So if you see this now, see these wires aren't sticking out or anything. They're not bunched up too much. If I did want to get to this, I could still pop this out. Could still get in there, no problem. Nothing's touching this. The heat sink is below that lip right there. All good. So now we need to put all these wires back in the machine. Okay. So when we mount this, this button's going to be on the bottom. So I turn it like this. So this is probably where we're going to want to put this, right here. So that's really all the slack we need. I'll pull a little bit extra. But I don't need much more than that. So I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to grab these zip ties. And I'm just going to run a cable, a zip tie right here around these cables. Right click on that. Right there. Headaches. Cut the end of that off. Okay, so now I have a zip tie here. Now I can pull these. So those will all kind of stay together now. Put this grommet back here. All right, so we set those down for now. So now I'm going to want to do some cable management inside of the machine. So I'm going to take that excess temperature sensor wire and move that right here. Okay, so now we have the rest of these wires. I think these are going to kind of need to be separate from everything else. Kind of just sorting these out, trying to figure out the best way to put these back here. These are okay for me. See, what I think we can do is just go straight back with them. Or grab another zip tie. Then, there we go. Trying to tighten those up a little bit. Okay. Right. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to kind of button up some of this excess. These I'm going to leave alone because these are for the flow control, so I'm going to keep them kind of separate from everything else. Try not to get the PID wires and the flow control wires mixed if you don't have to. It's right here, they're kind of separate. And I still plan on taping these, but what you can do with these when you're done with them is you can push them back into this corner behind the brew pump, and then they're kind of out of the way from everything else. Sure that's... Vent clip came on down. Okay, I'm going to probably do one last zip tie, and then we'll be done with most of the cable management. Let me put it here. Let me go. This one. Okay. So I'm not gonna layer with that. Doesn't have to be perfect. I just like to kind of keep everything out of the way so it doesn't feel so overwhelming on the inside. I'm not getting that one crazy tight or anything. All right. Okay, so now all of these are kind of out of the way. A little bit extra. Okay, so now all of these will kind of sit there. So now what I'm going to do is electrical tape my connections. You don't have to do this part, but This is a customer machine, so I always electrical tape anything that'll be shipped. You never know. So I'm going to start by getting some electrical tape over these connectors. This is definitely overkill, but better safe than sorry. And if you haven't fully verified and aren't fully confident that your machine is working, definitely hold off electrical taping until you've triple checked everything, because taking this off is not fun. You can sometimes leave yourself like a little lip, so you can easily take the electrical tape off, because it's not fun trying to yank it off inside the machine. So I just wrap it around the factory connector. And then I missed a little bit on this first one. This definitely don't need to, but just to be safe. This part of the connector is the only part on the Gaggia connectors that seems to break all the time. So it doesn't hurt to just put a little piece of tape. Probably wouldn't have been able to come off, but like I said, better safe than sorry. Okay, all 4 of those are done now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of those all kind of sit back in that corner. Your wires are going to sit back here. Got a whole mess of them. Last thing is these 2 connectors down here for the Bluetooth. I'm going to do that same exact thing. Except on these, I'm just pretty much taping these just to make sure these never come undone. To hold them in place. Okay. So now let's see if I can get these back behind the drew plug and out of the way. The water funnel. Maybe kind of hard to get back. Once you get it back there. That's on that out of sight, out of mind. In the unlikely event you need to get back there, you still can just fine. Cool. Okay, so now we just have these wires, and these wires right here. I'm just going to take these and kind of push them into this crack if I can. And in the pump. Doesn't matter if they're out later, but when you put the funnel in, you just want to make sure that you don't catch them with the funnel. All right. So now if we double check, we've got this tap, this tap, this tap. We've got our 4 wires, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 2 wires down there. That should be everything. I'm looking at my power buttons right now. Guess you can't see that. But anyways, I was looking at the power buttons and making sure that they were sitting flat. They are, so we're good to go there. So as far as That's all of the cable management. So the next thing would be to stick this to the machine. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to grab an alcohol pad. We're going to run it across this. Then I'm going to run it across my machine. Just trying to make sure that pad stays on. You can technically put this wherever you want. I think the best spot is on the front right-hand side over here. Some people like the left-hand side. Then this was the best way I put it, or this is the best way I could put the dimmer knob into the enclosure. Okay, so that's drying. So the next thing would be to take your adhesive. I'm gonna do a little square and a big square. Okay. Okay, just got this one ready. Looks like my box is dry. Just making sure. I don't want to even touch it. Okay. I'm just pressing it on, making sure it's on there snug. Cool. All right. Next, I'm going to do the same for this side. Push it on. Okay. And then one extra thing you can do, but you don't need to, is you can take some tape and you can just cover up that heat sink. I just don't want possibility that anything touches the side of the machine. So I'll just cover it up. Doesn't need to be super good. Just make sure that cover all the potential spots that something could happen. And then I'll just throw a little bit of tape over top of these. Definitely don't need to, but just in case. Cool. Now I feel a little bit better about that. Okay. So I'm going to take the adhesive off of this. Okay. We won't be able to see this super well, but now I'm going to stick it onto the side of the machine here. I'm getting down to make sure I'm level. Sticking it on. See? All right, now it's on. It's cool. So next part is we have to finish up and tidy up these grommets. So first things first, we can tidy up this grommet right here. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to grab flathead end of my screwdriver. And I'm going to try to push this grommet through. Angle that I'm at right here is really hard to see. So I might pause and come back. Okay, it took me a little bit to get that grommet on, but once you get the grommet done, it's all good from there. So last you have the vent grommet right here. Same thing, you want your flathead screwdriver. And then I like to get one side started, usually this way. No. The grommets are always a struggle, but it's a lot easier doing this than it is trying to shove the wires through the grommets after they're installed. I'm gonna have to come back for this one too. It's really awkward with this camera angle, but push this grommet through. Okay, so I just got mine through. So now you'll see this grommet is on. The other grommet you can barely see, but they're both on. So now what I'm going to do is just tighten up that last little bit of wire. Just going to pull this through. Get it to about here. Okay, we're going to take the spiral wrap. And we're going to start wrapping this around the cord. I would say I think that is pretty good. So now you just have one little cable coming out the back. Just have all of this wire in here. Just gonna go straight back there with it. Make sure everything is down and out of the way. I was messing with my vent clip, so it is off again. So I'm gonna put it back into place. Once it's in place, it won't ever move. Okay, so that should be good. Everything looks fine. So now we can put the machine back together, but first thing we need to do, put this on. Everyone always forgets to put this on, and then they have to take the whole thing back apart. Put this on, and then the way this goes is like this, with the flat end facing outwards. So put the little top hat on, and then we need to grab this, our steam wand. Get everything off. Keep the hole. Almost around the world with it. Make sure. Try to get a good connection on that. Then get it started. I'm not going to fully tighten it down yet, though. So now we should be able to put our steam knob back on. But first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put the boiler bolts back in. So I've got my 4 boiler bolts here. I'm going to put these bolts back on. So you'll see that first one is threaded now. I'm not going to tighten them all the way yet. I'm just going to get them pretty snug for now. And I'm not going to actually snug them down until I have all 4 of the bolts in. So there's the second. There is the third. And there is the forward. Cool. So now I'm slugging that one down. Going to the alternating side. And then I'm doing the same thing. Okay, so now all 4 of those boiler bits are tight. Hand tight is good enough for now. So now we can tighten that steam horn. I'm going to grab my bench just to get the last little bit. Good. Good enough. All right, we'll take this. So you could throw some electrical tape on that, hit it with a lighter, whatever you want to do. Okay, so now we should be able to put our lid back on without any issues. I suppose we could put the steam knob back on too. So on your steam knob, if you're trying to put this back on, is it focus? There's a flat end right here, and there's a flat end on your actual knob right here. See mine, this is the flat side. Make sure those line up, or it won't go over. Okay, place there. And then one thing about this steam knob is right here. You'll see sometimes it can be kind of close. What you want to do is, with the way you have your boiler in there, you want to make sure that your steam knob doesn't rub against this metal case right here, because if it does, it can dig into your metal knob, and then it'll dig, but it'll also look a little ugly. So just make sure that it's all good. If it's not, you can remove your boiler and then push it down and then tighten it back into place, and then eventually it will sit like it did before without rubbing. That's it. So that part is done. So now the next thing is to put the lid back on. So I'm going to put my still some of the factory stuff on there. Okay, so I'm going to put these 2 connectors back on. Cool. So they should both be back on. Okay, so now there is a hole. And this goes down here. You want to make sure that this piece, can you see it? There's a hole right here for this. This sits into that. So you want to make sure that that lines up, and then also make sure this lip lines up with this right here. So you'll see this goes in. I bend that a little bit. And once I'm in here, once I'm in right here, then this can go in, and then I'm looking down this hole. I'm making sure that I'm in the clear down there. And now this can go on. Last thing would be to put these back on. I'm actually going to use the bigger side so I don't accidentally strip the screws out. Okay, sorry. All right, now your machine should be able to be put back together. You'll see tray inserted back in the machine. We have the drip tray. Then we have the spout installed. So if you have the Sungaze controller, it should already be configured. But if you want to be safe, you can follow these steps, which is what everyone else who doesn't have a pre-configured controller should do. Your machine is set to heat right now, and a lot of these controllers are set to extremely high temperatures. So what that'll do is it'll make your Gaggia heat until your thermal fuse blows, which isn't the end of the world, but your machine will be down until you get that fixed. So the first thing we're going to do is turn the machine on, and then we're going to hit set, and then we're going to go to the 0089 menu, 0089, set. We're going to go to Corf, make sure that's on 1, okay, and then turn your machine off. Okay, now your machine should be in Fahrenheit. So I recommend taking 5 to 10 minutes between this step just to make sure your machine doesn't get too hot. Okay, next thing we're going to do is go to the 001 menu. Okay, the SV is 200, AH1 is 278, AL1 is 279, and that is it. It's just those three settings. If you are on Celsius, your numbers will be different. Make sure your AH1 and AL1 values are correct. The AH1 should always be below the AL1. The AL1 is the higher number. So after we do that, turn your machine off. You can wait your 5 to 10 minutes. And then next we will do the 0036 menu. So 0036. Okay, and we're going to hit set. Now P should be 4.5. I should be 64. D should be 16. And then SUF is 0.2. OT 002. Filt 0. End. Okay, so that is the 0036 menu. So I'm going to turn that machine off. You can wait your 5 to 10 minutes. And then the last thing we're going to set up is the 0089 menu. So I'm going to turn my machine back on. 0089 set. INTI should be P10. Make sure your INTI is P10. Audi should be 2. HY should be 0.3. PSB is negative 14.4. If you're on Celsius, that number will be different. RD is 0. Corf is 1. We set that earlier. And then end. Those are all of the settings. Okay, so that's it. That is configuring the PID controller. So now the last thing you can do after everything's configured is we can turn the machine on. And now I'm going to prime the pump, make sure everything looks good. So right now the dimmer is completely off. I turned the brew on. So now I'm going to turn this dimmer all the way open. Wait for water to come out. There we go. All right, now I've got water through here. Now we can adjust that down or up as needed. Awesome. So now our machine will heat up. Everything looks good. So if you're wondering how to do pre-infusion, assume you are making your shot. Everything is ready to go. You would flip the brew switch. Your machine will be fully on like this. Your button will stay pressed. And then as soon as you see espresso start to come out of your portafilter, you will then do this. I'll turn your knob all the way back. Your flow will slow down to very slow. You'll give it a 5 to 8 second count, and then you'll fully ramp up like this. And that is how you'll finish your shot. The only time you should ever need to adjust this knob is when you're doing that pre-infusion. Otherwise, this should stay all the way wide open for brew and for steam. All right, that's it.